Welcome to FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Sebastian Fox.
And I'm Tony Sherman. Each video we take a chosen movie and lead our discussion on our thoughts and opinions.
We will be getting into the character, plot, and technical achievements with no regard for spoilers.
So if you haven't seen this movie and don't want to hear said spoilers, you have been warned.
Also stick around to the end to hear the topic for the next video.
Today's movie is Casablanca.
So Casablanca is a movie that came out in 1942, directed by Michael Curtiz, and stars Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah. And this was pretty much my first time seeing this movie.
I saw it once earlier this year, but it's basically the first time I've seen it as well.
Yeah. I remember we were supposed to watch it for like the AP World History class or something like that, and only half paid attention. So it's one of those movies where I feel like everyone has a general idea of the story and everyone kind of knows a little bit about it, but doesn't really know all of the ins and outs of the details of this movie.
Right.
There's a lot more that I picked up on when I was actually now watching it, with paying attention and looking for some of those details.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot about this movie being like one of the best movies of all time. And Going into it, I assumed that it was going to be really good from a technical perspective, but I didn't know how much I was going to engage with the characters and the story.
Right.
But I actually really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. Very, very, very enjoyable. Even with it being this older kind of movie and feels like it's less worked on, but at the same time being filmed in the middle of the war back in like 1942, I think is when they filmed and released this movie. So it's right there in the middle of World War II while it's set during World War II. Kind of surprised me that they were doing that.
Yeah, I'd never looked at the date or when it came out, so it was interesting that it came out during the war.
Yeah.
And very interesting that it's an American movie that came out before the U.S. was involved in the war, but it has a definite opinion about the war.
Yeah, and that was something that seemed very interesting, that getting into the character of Rick, he starts off in the movie being this very standoffish. He doesn't care about anyone. He even says he doesn't stick his neck out for anybody. But throughout the movie, we see that he has in the past stood up for what is right, and throughout the movie, he stands up for what is right and helps those around him. So kind of seeing a parallel to maybe the directors or the writers' intent to how should America respond to what's happening around the world.
Yes. So this movie opens with just kind of showing the city. Like, it just kind of pans down and you see just things going on, and you just see a lot of characters just kind of going about their daily lives.
Day-to-day lives, people buying and selling things around the square there in Casablanca, people talking about how to get out of Casablanca.
Yes.
So we see a lot of different kind of interactions between some of those characters.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about this movie is some of those characters with just like really small parts that are basically just background characters. They keep coming back.
Right.
And it makes the city of Casablanca feel more real. Like, just there are people there that are living their lives. Like, this one couple is trying to get out of the city, trying to get to America.
Right.
And they just kind of show up in the background every once in a while. But they have this full story arc throughout the background of this. I like that.
Yeah. I feel like that's something that is kind of a common thing in the movies that we've talked about over the past few weeks or so, or I guess months now, however long it's been, where there are these little minor characters that have a feeling of being very fleshed out, even if they only have a handful of lines. Like, even the bartender at Rick's Cafe he only has a few lines, and he's only like this little kind of minor character, but you get a nice kind of feel for him, like the way he interacts with Yvonne, and the way that he is caring towards her, and like we see his play back and forth with Rick. We see like he seems like a interesting person. Like they could have built more about him as well.
And then when Rick helps the couple at the end, he is very comes up and congratulates
Rick.
Very,
exactly, goes up and kisses Rick, and so it's like just a small little character that they didn't have to throw in there, but they added him in just to add this flavor. It also, I feel, kind of shows like this broader nationality that's part of Casablanca, that we have all of these, I guess, refugees in a sense, where we have Rick, the American, we have Laszlo, the Parisian, the Frenchman, we have Ananina, I think her name was, the young couple, I think they said they were from Poland. We have Sasha, the bartender, who's from Russia. We have all these people from around the world congregating there in Casablanca and trying to make the best of their lives that they can there in Casablanca.
Yes.
When we see Rick's Cafe for the first time, we see this larger man going and providing drinks for different people and interacting with the customers, and the customers ask, "Oh, where's Rick? Tell Rick to come and talk with us, sit with us, and drink with us, and spend time with us." And the man responds saying, "Oh, Rick doesn't sit with the customer. He doesn't drink with the customers. He doesn't associate with the customers." So it's a very interesting thing that later on, when Ilsa and Laszlo come in, he decides to drink with them, and Captain Renault, the French officer, the policeman, says that, "Oh, precedent has been broken here. We have Rick sitting with the customers." But I feel like that was somewhat different in that these two people weren't the normal kind of customers.
Yeah, they were someone from Rick, or she was someone from Rick's past. But that had never come up before. It just, he had been kind of hiding there almost. Yeah,
that's true. So Renault doesn't know about that connection, but seems to quickly find out, she was speaking of Rick in a way that made me jealous. So seeing that, okay, there's clearly something going on between Rick and Ilsa, but not quite knowing at that point what it might have been. So we see when we have that flashback, and it goes on to show what was that connection between Rick and Ilsa, we end up seeing a reasoning for why Rick is this cynical, somewhat uncaring man that he is in this beginning of the movie. We see that he cared a lot about Ilsa, and when she leaves him with practically no word, doesn't say anything except leaving a letter behind, he's completely caught off guard, bewildered, and almost as if from then on decides not to make any kind of emotional connection with other people. From then on, we see that the comment with Yvonne, when Yvonne says, "Where were you last night?" and he says, "Oh, so long ago." I can't remember. Don't remember.
But even with him trying not to make these connections, he still does kind of, because his staff definitely respect him a lot, and he seems to look out for him, because his club gets shut down like halfway through, and he still says that he's going to pay their salaries while the club is shut down. So like, even though he has that kind of initial reaction of I'm not wanting to make those connections, he still feels that need to, these are people that I know I need to protect and I need to help provide. And it seems as if it's more than just his staff that respects him and admires him and knows about him. Even like his competitor that comes over and tries to buy his bar. Ferrari, they seem to have some respect between each
respect other as businessmen. And we see when Rick tries to speak with Ilsa the next day after their reunion in the middle of the night where they clashed.
Yeah.
She's standing at the stall looking at different linens, and the shopkeeper there is trying to get a high price for these linens. But once Rick walks up, he goes, "Oh, friend of Rick's, let me give you a special discount." So this shopkeeper, who we never have seen before and we don't see again, knows about Rick, and so it kind of builds this intrigue about, well, why does Rick have such a large amount of respect and admiration from these townsfolk? Who is he, and what kind of role does he play here in Casablanca?
I do kind of feel a bit with that specific person of the merchant.
Yeah,
he's just trying to make a sale. He's not really.
Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible. Yeah. The salesmanship is a very interesting concept that gets talked about throughout the film. We have that interaction there where he's trying to sell these linens. So like even when she doesn't want that large linen tablecloth piece, he says, "Oh, let me see. I've got some handkerchiefs or something. I have these smaller pieces I might be able to sell." And we also see Ferrari, the owner of the Blue Parrot, which is, I guess, kind of like another kind of cafe, hookah bar, lounge kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's kind of this head of this black market kind of organization, and he's interested in, what can I do to be able to get a piece of Rick's cafe? What can I do to? I really like this piano player that you have, Sam. Well, how much you'd be willing to sell him for? So we have a lot of this kind of salesmanship characters, and even when Ilsa mentions Paris one of the first times when she's speaking with Rick has the line of, "Don't mention Paris, that's bad salesmanship." He already knows talking about that's not going to get a good reaction. So
right.
we see that kind of idea show up a little bit.
Yeah, and even just the nature of Casablanca, everyone's trying to get out, everyone's looking to buy a way out.
Right.
So you have a lot of salesmen.
Yeah.
And even like the first shot in Rick's bar is just, you see a lot of different people making these deals.
Yeah, selling diamonds, talking about how to get these exit visas, who to talk to, where to go. Yeah, we get a lot of that kind of thing. So a lot of that kind of shady business kind of taking place, which even though they try to keep it hidden, I feel like it's almost like an open secret that everyone there knows that this is happening. Because, like, well, how else are people able to enter and leave? You would think that the Germans would have a pretty close eye on, oh, there's this Laszlo character that we want to capture, and he just happens to show up, and maybe he can get an exit visa somehow through the plot of this movie. It seems like, why didn't the Germans just try harder to capture him? Why didn't they like kill him or imprison him when they had the chance?
Yeah, well, it did say, because France was under German control, but this was unoccupied France. It wasn't France, really Morocco, part of the German empire or whatever.
Yeah.
So they were trying they had some lines about that, about trying to avoid incidents.
Yeah. They didn't want things to look bad on Captain Renault. It would reflect poorly on him. Yeah.
But they did keep Renault from signing anything that would get
him out
of the country.
Right. Yeah. And they also talked about Laszlo becoming a martyr for the cause.
Right.
If he were struck down, then hundred thousands, I think they said a huge number of people would rise up and replace him and say, yes, this person was an important person and stood for a good cause, and now all of a sudden you're going to have all these other people coming up trying to take his place and stand where he stood. Yeah,
the Germans definitely had a hard time deciding what to do, because also they couldn't have him leave and go to the Americas and escape, but he also couldn't stay there because he could become a rallying point for a lot of the revolutionaries in that area.
In French Morocco, right. Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting that he got to that place, and all of a sudden the Germans were kind of in a catch-22. If they let him leave, it's bad. If they let him stay, it could be even worse potentially. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very interesting that Laszlo has such a huge voice in this movie. He's almost kind of like a rival character to Rick.
Yeah.
But he is at the same time kind of like this main kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? Like he's a very large character that plays a very vital role in this film as part of the story, driving forward how should we view that interaction between French Morocco and the Germans? How should we view and respond to this German invasion into this unoccupied area in Morocco?
Yeah. Going back to him and Rick, they're very similar in many ways. It's almost like they're a foil for each other, where they have a lot of similarities, but it's kind of, they have like one big difference of, but they both had like tried to help out people in the past, and they both were in love with the same girl and all of this.
We see like you said, foil. That's a very good word for it. That they have a lot of the same characteristics, but Rick, I feel like, as the story's main protagonist, has that fatal flaw in his character that he was hurt previously, and so now he has this desire to distance himself and this isolationist kind of viewpoint of, well, I don't want to be in America, so he fled America. I don't want to be in Paris in France, so he left France. So he goes to this middle of the nowhere kind of place of Casablanca in northern Africa. And it's, of course, only by coincidence or some kind of machinations of the plot that the love interest that he had back in Paris just happens to show up in his cafe in Casablanca.
All the gin joints and all the towns in all the world.
Yeah. Speaking of different lines, several different lines in this movie that kind of stand out as popularized and maybe misquoted occasionally as well. But yeah, several of them. Would you say that you have a favorite line in this movie?
Favorite? It's hard to pick. There's so many good ones. Like the "Here's looking at you, kid."
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because it's just this line that has a lot of meaning for Rick and Ilsa.
Right. Yeah.
But it's also just kind of weird for him to call her kid in that sort of relationship.
Yeah. It's kind of like a weird kind of flirtatious affectation that he has towards her, calling her kid.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that was kind of a norm where you have these slightly older men in these kinds of roles towards women. But I don't know. But yeah, Here's Looking at You, Kid's a good one. I also like the last line of the movie. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, because it goes on to show, well, Rick has grown, he's changed throughout the movie, and now he's beginning to say, well, even though I held a gun on you just a few minutes ago, I think we can have a very nice relationship, a friendship, trying to figure out where to go from here. So I feel like that was a very nice way to kind of wrap up the movie.
Yeah, both of those characters at the end, him and the
Captain
Renault, both kind of had a lot of change of heart over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
Because one of the last scenes, you see the captain, he picks up this bottle of wine or water or something.
Yeah, the Vichy water.
Yeah, and then he immediately throws it in the bin and kicks it over. And the first couple watches, I did not know what that was. Yeah. But when I looked it up, Vichy's is this part of France that was unoccupied, but still had sympathies towards the Nazis.
The Germans and the Nazis.
So him kind of choosing not to drink the wine or water, whatever it was sort of an act of not rebellion, but sort of saying that I'm not
going to follow these ideals anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of a change of heart, a heel turn, going from, well, the Germans are in power here and they've kind of taken over a bit, so yeah, let me just keep my position and go along with it, and at the end deciding I can't keep doing this, so throwing it away, kicking it away. Yeah,
even more than just goes along with it, because he like in the middle of the movie he does try to blackmail that girl as a couple to he says he'll get her a exit visa,
right,
which it never says what what the deal was, but you can assume
some kind of payment, right? So clearly money makes the world go round, even in Casablanca in Morocco.
Yeah
But yeah, that's a very interesting viewpoint.
Yeah, going back to the lines that are memorable from this movie.
Right.
There is one line that is quoted everywhere, but is not actually in this movie.
Right.
Play it again, Sam, is not actually said in this movie.
Yeah. And
kind of like the line, Luke, I am your father.
Right. Yeah. Everyone says, Luke, I am your father. I feel like, to their credit, if you're only going to be saying the line by itself, it kind of adds a little bit of context by saying, play again, Sam. Luke, I am your father. Whereas if you say the actual line, maybe you're missing a little bit of the context of, okay, well, when is the line said? But yeah, it is definitely misquoted quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
So in that scene, when Ilsa comes back to talk to Rick, she tells the story of kind of her past. So she says that she tells a story about a young girl who met a man who kind of changed her worldview and everything.
Everything that she became was because of him.
Yeah, and I realized watching it this last time that she's probably, the way that you take it the first time you watch it, she's talking about Rick.
Right.
But I realized that probably she's talking about Victor, Laszlo.
Yeah, because I think like even still the rewatch that we were watching it, I was thinking that I was still looking at Rick, that she's talking about meeting Rick, and in my mind I'm thinking she's talking about how meeting Rick changed her, meaning Richard changed her as a person and everything about her became better. And I think, well, at the time she was married to Laszlo, so it kind of almost doesn't make sense if we think about it, meaning her meeting Richard, as she called him at the time. But yeah, it seems like it's a better fit for her to be talking about who she met when she first met Victor Laszlo, because at that time, Rich still didn't know that she and Victor were and currently are married at that point in the film.
Yeah.
Going towards the end of the movie, we get these exit visas, where we have these 2 exit visas, and Ilsa and Rick and Victor are trying to figure out who should go. How are we supposed to be using these exit visas to escape from
originally
Casablanca?
Rick won't give them up.
Right.
Until Ilsa comes back and confronts him and he learns what really happened in Paris.
Right. And so they come up with this somewhat convoluted plan of, we're going to mislead Victor, and Rick and Ilsa are going to go and leave Victor behind, but then Victor thinks about it more, and Ilsa even tells him, I don't want to do any more thinking. I want you to do the thinking for both of us.
Yeah.
So we see that he does so and kind of changes the plans.
Yeah, last second.
Yeah. We see that Victor, in my recollection of it, that Victor was saying that he wanted Rick to keep Ilsa safe by taking Ilsa. So Rick and Ilsa would go.
Yeah.
And Ilsa was wanting to go with Rick, so Ilsa and Rick go. And then at the time, it seemed as if Rick was wanting to be with Ilsa, so Rick and Ilsa should go. So it seems as if it ties everything together. Rick and Ilsa get to be together, and it's a happy ending.
Yeah.
But overnight, we see that Rick kind of changes the plans a bit. Yeah. And so the question is, when did he make that decision?
Yeah, he says the line to Ilsa when he's explaining why he changed.
Right.
Of like Victor's work is too important, like, and she's kind of a part of that. Like she keeps him going.
Right.
So it's kind of
might
him.
Not understand now.
Yeah. As he was thinking through everything after she left, it kind of his patriotic side kind of came through, and he wanted Victor. He thought that Victor's work was more important.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he says that the problems of three people amount to like nothing.
A hill of beans. Nothing compared to all of the other problems in this world. We even see when Rick and Victor first meet, Rick says, I applaud you for your work.
Yeah.
And so he knew Victor Laszlo, he knew the importance of his work, even when he first met him. So then there at the end of the movie, he saw the influence that Ilsa had on Victor and saw, well, if we're going to be able to push forward with this revolution, with this uprising, trying to build the people back up, Rick would have to stay behind, and he'd have to let Victor and Ilsa go.
Right. Yeah.
Another line that I thought was interesting when Rick and Ilsa first met again at the cafe. Yeah. They're talking about, what was the last time that we met? And Rick says, oh, it was there in Paris at this location. You wore this blue dress. And Ilsa says, oh, how nice, you remembered. And almost has this tone as if she's upset with Rick. And at that first watch through, I was thinking, oh my goodness, what did Rick do that made Ilsa upset? What happened in the past? I knew that there was something in the past, right, in the background with their story.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later that it's almost as if Ilsa was kind of more at fault by leaving and not being able to communicate effectively to Rick.
Yeah.
Why she left. So I thought it's kind of strange that she's appearing very upset at Rick when she first meets back up.
Yeah, when her and Laszlo first come in and she sees Sam, they get to the table and they don't see Ugarte, who they were supposed to meet.
Yeah.
And she is trying to convince Victor that they should leave.
Right.
So like at the beginning, it kind of comes across that she didn't want to see Rick again.
Ah.
But then getting Sam to play this song, of course he comes over, so
that's true.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's true. She did say when Rick questioned her later on and said, why did you come to Casablanca? Why did you come here? And she responds saying, if I'd known that you were here, I wouldn't have. Yes. So that's very likely. Yeah, she probably didn't want to have that interaction again. She thought she had a clean cut from Rick.
Right.
And now all of a sudden she's back entwined with him all over again. Speaking of Sam playing the piano, it seems as if Sam is very protective of Rick, trying to keep Ilsa away from him and trying to keep him away from Ilsa. That anytime they're together, he's not wanting to play the music, saying, "Oh, I don't remember the song," or I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you want me to play. So it's kind of an interesting relationship between Sam and Rick, and wondering, how far back did that relationship go? Did it go back before Paris? Did they first meet in Paris? Yeah. And looking at, what is their story?
Yeah, well, a lot of the protective nature probably comes from right after Paris, because you can definitely tell from at the beginning of the movie, Rick has definitely been changed by those events, and he's a lot more cold and cut off. So Sam has been there through all of that. He knows what Ilsa did to him. So I understand about him wanting to keep them separate,
keep his friend from getting hurt again. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it seemed every time that Ilsa did show up, Sam kind of skedaddles. He's there, she shows up, and then Sam's gone. So protective, but then even when they do meet, he gets pushed out of the scene, and we're stuck with those two forces. Yeah. So there were a lot of songs, and when I looked it up, there were actually a lot of songs that they either made specifically for the movie or added into the movie that I guess they might have just been like little incidental pieces that you don't really even notice are playing in the background every once in a while.
Interesting.
But yeah, couldn't really tell any significance
I didn't know that any music was actually written for, besides the score. I didn't know that any music was actually written.
Yeah, apparently that "Knock on Wood" song was actually written specifically for Casablanca.
Interesting.
So that's a little tidbit.
Another thing I had written down was the Cross of Lorraine. That ring, that burger shows them with the double cross. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I kind of forget exactly what it was. I looked it up, but it was
something to do with the French underground, maybe.
Yeah, it was kind of
French.
Yeah,
Free France.
But it was like from World War I originally, and it was some city that I guess had been taken by Germany, and then that cross just kind of became the symbol of the resistance.
Interesting. Yeah. That's one thing that I think is very interesting, looking at the history that goes into films, regardless of whether they're actual true historical fiction or not. But there's always a background that is, if not explicitly stated throughout the film, it's at least understood that there's something that's been happening up to this point in the story.
Right.
So understanding, okay, yeah, we had this cross that Berger had inside that ring being some kind of symbol from even World War One. So again, something that people watching this movie at the time would be very familiar with that symbol and know right away what that kind of symbol would mean.
Yeah, and then the symbol shows up a few other times at the beginning when it shows the police force rounding up the usual suspects. The one that they shoot, he falls over and he drops some papers, and it has the cross on it too.
Yeah. Speaking of, he gets shot, but like they don't show anything.
Yeah.
So it's like you just kind of see him hold his back and fall over.
Yeah,
you think maybe they could have done something.
I know in old Hollywood, a lot of times when they fired guns, they actually fired real bullets.
Really? Oh.
So I don't know, because I was watching it. They actually cut before they shoot the guns. So
That's interesting. I did not know that.
So then also with the wounds, it doesn't show anything like when he gets shot.
Right.
But later when Victor is in the club, he gets back from
running away. Yeah.
And he's supposed to have jumped through a window, and his arm is supposed to be hurt. Yeah, he's wrapping it with a towel. But the towel kind of falls off for a second, and his arm's just fine.
An arm. Yeah. And like the towel, he wraps the towel one way and doesn't work, so he like wraps it the other way.
Yeah.
And then you would have seen all the blood that would have been on it, but since he put it on backwards, there's still nothing on it. But they had blood on his shirt, but just didn't think to put blood on the towel or his arm or anything.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what movies really could do back then. I don't know if there was. The movie was rated, so I guess the MPAA was
so
around back then, but I don't know what they would have been okay with.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing with a lot of these movies, like this movie and Gone with the Wind as well. Another movie that got in trouble for some of the things that they were trying to do, some of the language that they used.
Right.
We'll get to that in another video. So that's an interesting thing, that maybe there was a little bit of censorship and control over what can and can't be shown in movies at that time. Yeah. Some other things that I thought were interesting with this being an older film, looking at how they handled the scenes with the airplanes. Like they had the one shot where you see these people at this table, this outside table at the cafe, and then they look over and they see the plane taking off, and it's kind of a weird kind of scene in that the bottom half of the scene looks like the people at the table, but then the other part of the scene is the planes, but it almost looks like two separate shots that they kind of spliced together.
Kind of like when in the flashback when Elsa and Rick were driving the
the
car. And they had,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, because I don't think they had anything like green screen back then, so
Right.
I'm thinking that they actually had like a projector set up behind them.
Likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to make that work out, that we can introduce, okay, here's where we have these planes. We have this airport where people are utilizing it to try and get from Morocco out. Yeah.
Yeah, another interesting cinematography bit is in Rick's.
Yes.
There's the scene right after that scene, actually, when the guy in the back comes out from the casino and he says that the guy had won like
20,000 francs or whatever. Yeah.
And Rick goes in with the
Captain Renault. Yeah.
And they go up to his office to get the money.
Right.
And then the camera just kind of follows them, and it goes like through the wall as they're walking through the door, which is interesting because I guess that means the whole place is a set,
like some kind of set. Like they were able to just like move around. Yeah, because I think every other scene when they're going from like his office to like kind of that living space that he has and to the actual cafe, is just cuts from the one space to the other.
Yeah,
they don't actually have the camera go through so you can see it. So I thought, that was very interesting that you could see that transition. And then when he goes on to open the safe, we see Captain Renault still standing there.
Yeah, it stays with him as Rick continues.
Right, and we see Rick's shadow show up on the wall as he opens the safe. So we see some kind of significance to that, maybe, you think?
I wasn't really thinking about the significance. I just thought it was a very well done
shot. Well framed, yeah. So it's interesting. So it's wondering, like, might there be some kind of analysis that we could read into, that we have his shadow going on the wall, but we have Renault looking on at him. Yeah. Who's to say?
Yeah, I kind of forget what the conversation was really about there. So
yeah. I don't remember either. I remember they were talking about the 20,000 francs. They were talking about betting the 10,000 francs, whether Laszlo.
That was right after that. So
they were talking about Laszlo and all that. So I don't know. Yeah.
I did actually have that Rick's had an American aesthetic.
Yeah.
It was very different from Ferrari's sort of.
Yeah, that's true.
Because his was a lot more in with the culture
of Morocco. Yeah. He had the garb and everything. He had the
fez.
More traditional clothing. Yeah. Whereas Rick, everywhere he goes, he's wearing the suit. So yeah, fitting more with kind of that traditional kind of American. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting holding on to that piece of his past, because he seems very secretive about most of his past.
Yeah. I wish they went more into his past, talking about the dossier that they had on him. They talked about, we knew why you left Paris, we knew what you were doing in Paris, but they don't really go on to describe that any more than that. And even him leaving America, Captain Renault throws out a couple theories.
He says they're all true.
They're all true, maybe, right? Potentially. Yeah. Well, that's something to look into a little bit more, maybe.
One thing you said, you mentioned that Rick always wears like his suit at all times. I thought an interesting bit of costuming. I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but after that first conversation, the conversation at night between Rick and Ilsa, the next morning, when he sees her outside of Ferrari's and he talks to her, she's wearing this like striped dress, and he has a tie on that has stripes on it as well. And I didn't know if that was intentional.
An intentional costuming decision there, making them match, trying to get the audience to associate some more of a connection there between them, maybe. Yeah. Interesting.
But his stripes were a bit slanted, so I don't know if that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Isn't that the way this always goes? We always read a little bit too much into it, I think. All right. Well,
that will do it for this video. We would like to thank Millie Step for creating our theme.
And join us in the comment section below to go over any questions and add to the discussion on Casablanca.
And subscribe so you don't miss our next video, where we will be discussing The Iron Giant.
This has been FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Tony.
And I'm Fox, and we will see you in the next video.